So we've gotten the bottom end of our engine buttoned up and we're ready to put the heads on. Stay tuned. Welcome back to In the Garage. In this episode we're actually going to show you how to put the heads on. We're going to show you the heads we've chosen and why we've chosen them. There are a few things in preparation we need to do to the block as we get ready for final assembly and bolts of the heads on. First thing we're going to do, is we've done in every stage, is make sure that the block is clean and ready to accept the gaskets and then the heads themselves. So we want to clean the deck surface thoroughly before we put the heads on for the final time and bolt them into place. What we use is just a standard brake cleaner to wipe down all the deck surfaces and make sure all of the oil and assembly lube and everything that we've used to put the pistons and everything in is cleaned from the deck. You want to have as clean and true a surface as you can when you mate the gasket and then the head to the surface. So let's do that real quick and then we'll talk about the heads we've chosen. Okay, so we've gotten everything clean. Now when you're using shop towels or anything like this, it's better to use something cotton instead of a paper material, because you're going to have little pieces of lint go down into your bolt holes and into the piston. Make sure everything's clean after you've wiped down the deck, and then try not to touch the deck anymore after you've got it cleaned off. The other step that we've done on this side, we'll need to do on this side, is we went ahead and retapped the bolt holes just to make sure they're clean and the threads are as true as possible, so we can get a good torque on the heads, because that's going to be a key part of making sure these heads don't leak, is making sure the torque is true on everything. So we've tapped this side, we're going to go ahead and tap the other bank, and then we'll be ready to put the gaskets in. You see there's quite a bit of resistance here. This is the reason we go through and retap these bolt holes, is what can happen is you can have corrosion set up in the threads where these blocks have sat after they've been machined. And you need to just go through and make sure that the threads are good and clean, because if you don't, you go to lay the head on, put the head bolts in and torquing everything down, and the bolt snags in a thread like this, you'll get a false reading on your torque wrench. You'll think you've gotten it torqued to where you want it. You'll go to bolt everything up, and then you'll start having head leaks, because that bolt never did actually get to the true torque spec you're trying to get it to. So this is just a good practice when you're building engines, is to go through, especially with the head. These bolts are critical, and go through and getting them clean, retap them real quick. Just a good maintenance process to go through to make sure that your block gives you the service you're wanting. So we've got one more to do. We'll go ahead and finish it up, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so now we've got all our threads cleaned. We've cleaned the deck surface. We're ready to put in. We've got one of our gaskets on. Now this is our Edelbrock head gasket set. These are our head gaskets themselves. It is important to note which side goes up. The strap side always goes up. You've got two dowels on the deck itself that you use to line the head gasket up on. Push it on. Now with the bolts, we've got our ARP head bolts. In the specification instructions for our Edelbrock head, it says we need to use thread lock on the threads themselves. Then we're going to use the ARP grease on the washer to make sure that it moves fluidly as we're getting our torque in. So we're going to go ahead and prep all of our bolts, get them ready to put the head on. We'll lay this head in place. Okay, so now that we've got our gasket set in, we can go ahead and grab our head. Now these heads are heavy. Make sure you get a good positive hold on them, because you definitely don't want to drop one of these. You've got your two dowels on the deck that you're going to line it up on. There we go. Now the heads we're using are the Edelbrock Performer RPM heads. These are aluminum heads. These sets have actually been set up to accept our hydraulic roller lifter setup. We've got the part number in the description below. It's the nice thing about the Edelbrocks is they're set up at the factory. They're supposed to be a bolt-on, ready to go head. We're going to go ahead and get our bolts dropped in. We'll show you how to install it. Again, this is critically important. The torque pattern that you use on these, this is an aluminum head, so you're going to want to make sure that you bolt or torque it down uniformly so you don't bend or warp the head in any way. So we're going to show you that pattern after we get the bolt set in. Okay, so we've got our torque wrench set up at 40 foot-pounds. We're going to do 40, 50, and then the 65 for the final torque on these. Again, doing it in steps so that we're not putting all the pressure on it at once. We'll go through, get them all to 40, get them all to 50, and then to 65. As I mentioned earlier, these are our instructions from Edelbrock. Here is the actual bolt pattern that they recommend you use for torquing. So we're going to follow this, go through it once at 40, once at 50, and once at 65 for the final torque, and then we'll do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so we've gotten everything torqued at 40. We went back through and did everything at 50. So this is our final torque to the specs at 65 foot-pounds, following the same pattern. Now, what I usually like to do when I'm doing my final torque is I'll get it to torque, and then I'll hit it a couple more times to make sure it torqued down properly. So I'm going to go through and do all of these, and then I'll actually go through and I'll start over and do them again, just to make sure that we don't have any problem. Okay, so we've got the head down. We've checked our torques twice at our final torque. Put the other head on. We'll rinse and repeat. Be right back. Okay, that's it. We've got everything torqued down on our other head. We're finished here. In our next episode, we're going to talk about the valve train. As always, go to partspro.com to find your local Parts Pro store who can help you with this project or the project for your vehicle. See you in the next episode.